Welcome everyone to another thought-provoking global legal tech talks in conjunction with Workday. I am Anissa Tenner, Head of Events at Netlaw Media, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today where we are going to be discussing talent retention in an era of AI within legal services. We're all well versed by now that artificial intelligence has reshaped the legal landscape, and as such, firms face a critical challenge: retaining top talent in an environment of rapid change. Today, we have three special guests who will explore how AI is influencing roles, expectations, and career trajectories within legal services, and what leaders can do to foster loyalty, purpose, and growth among their teams. So as this is a live session, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box. And should time allow, we'll come to these towards the end of the discussion. Okay, so leading today's session is Chris Bull, management consultant, retained advisor, thought leader and speaker focused on the legal sector. He is currently being kept very busy as interim COO at Wigan, and in the past worked with mold-breaking law firms such as Osborne Clarke, COO for Europe and the Americas at alternative legal service provider Integrian, and much more. So welcome, Chris, and thank you all for joining us today. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Anissa. Good to be back on the Legal Tech Talks Netlaw Media session, and we've got a good one for today. This is the last one of the calendar year, as you would probably expect, and so we finished it on, I think, a really topical, fascinating subject. We build this as being all about AI and retention, and we're gonna really come to some questions around retention and attraction and attrition in relation to AI and technology. But we're going to broaden that out a bit as well to kind of almost the whole fast evolving relationship between AI, particularly Gen AI, and people in the legal sector, but with a few insights from other sectors as well. We've got a few kind of sub-themes to work our way through in a fairly loose fashion. So we've got our two speakers who are going to introduce themselves in just a second and tell you a bit more about them and how they get involved in this fascinating area. And as Anissa said, if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat, and I will do my best to get to some of them, as many of them as I can, at the end of the session. And we will wrap up at 3:30 UK time and finish on time, as we always try and do. So let me get on with this and bring in our speakers. And rather than me kind of reading a bit of a bio, it's best to hear from them. So I'm going to ask each of them. I'm going to start with you, Natalie, and then Kyle, just to say a little bit about who you are, but also about how you and the organisations you work with, have been working with, are engaging with this subject of AI and people. Give us an idea for that as well. So Natalie, why don't you go first?
Okay, thanks, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out to join us this afternoon. So I am Natalie Griffin. I am a strategic advisor and transformational specialist, and I'm focused particularly on the professional services sector. I have personally worked for 15 years in the legal sector, the most recent of that being at Clyde & Co as their global COO, and you might have seen in the press a few years ago, I led on the merger with BLM. So a lot of people aspects to that. I'm particularly passionate about AI. I think it is going to fundamentally shift the dial in terms of the business model in the legal sector. And I think it's going to be a huge area of competitive advantage for some, not all, law firms, as is the way with any big fundamental change commercially. My own experiences with AI. So what I would say is, I think about AI in a few different strands. So I've had experiences where AI is used to, for instance, automate a process, augment a process that already exists, so back office element of it. So one of the projects I've been involved in personally is automatic kind of opening of matters and using AI to help kind of automate that process. I've also been very close to client expectations on AI, which I'd say is going to be a big driver in the marketplace. So what clients already now expect from their law firms, what they put into their tenders, what products they're expecting. So really where we've helped to build client products that incorporate AI. And then the last one is also where people are using, so the first two, really, when you're talking about fee earners or partners, there's something tending to be done in business services or the back office. The other area, though, is where people are using Copilot. So where you're expecting every single individual to use that licensed product to work with them on a daily basis to make them more efficient, more effective, make life easier, etc. And I've also been involved in that and been somebody myself who's been given an AI license and told to have a play around with it. So so that's my personal experience, I suppose, with all of those aspects of AI.
Very good. Thanks for that. We're going to dig into a few of Natalie's points there in just a second. Kyle, why don't you follow up and give us a bit of an intro to you and how you get involved in all of this?
Sounds good. So yeah, thank you, Chris and Anissa and the whole Net Law team, and thank you everybody for joining. I'm really excited to be here. So my name is Kyle Wilkinson. I'm the strategic industry advisor for professional business services at Workday. I'm based here in London, and I cover the EMEA region, but I'm also on a global team. I've spent my entire career in the professional services sector and helping professional services organizations. It's a pretty broad industry for us. So we've got accounting firms, law firms, consulting, staffing, and outsourcing. So it's a pretty big mix, and I get to work with a lot of them. So happy to bring not only what I'm seeing in the legal sector, but also what I'm hearing from some of those adjacent areas, because I think there's some learnings you can have from there as well. In terms of our experience in legal, so Workday, we have a lot of fantastic law firm customers, 4 of the 5 Magic Circle here in the UK. I think it's 14 of the top 30, a lot of law firm customers in the US as well. So I get to engage with that legal community and the broader professional services industry. So excited to share what I'm hearing from leaders in that space. In terms of my experience with AI, as someone working for a tech company, definitely have a lot of experience with AI. Feels like every single month this year, I've had new training on AI. Part of that is obviously we have a ton of products and offerings that leverage AI. Some of it is just enabling we have to help us speak to our customers about our offerings. But equally, we're also getting a lot of training about how we can use it in our day-to-day lives and productivity tools. So one really cool example we just had a couple weeks ago, someone on our ops team built a very cool AI agent, and they're feeding data to it from some key reports that we often use. They also gave it access to some external data to help give it context. And so now, I kind of feel like a Captain Kirk, captain of the Enterprise. I get to just ask the computer instead of going to a BI tool and going to a bunch of different reports. I can just literally ask the computer, hey, what was revenue last year compared to this year in the legal sector in the UK? And it just gives me the answer. And then it goes a step further and starts telling me, hey, it might be due to these factors. You might want to go compare it to this region or go look at these reasons. So it's really, really fun. And yeah, it's been exciting to see. So we're investing a lot in AI, but also investing a lot in the people side of AI, which I think is really, really important.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and I've actually just we'll hold that thought and just drill into this. And I'll get Natalie's view on it as well. But starting with you, Kyle, one of the things that I'm hearing and seeing loads more in law firms now, but I think it applies to all businesses, is that we're getting beyond what was the question about a year ago, which is, well, what do you mean when you say AI? What do what it was quite an esoteric debate. What is AI? What is Gen AI? What's the difference now? Oh no, it's not that. It's agentic AI. And it becomes very, very philosophical almost, but people get very passionate about it. Now I'm seeing real live law firms, lay people have to get into this question because they're putting AI policies together, usage policies. They're having to say to their clients, we do use AI. This is how we use it. This is what we use. And one of the questions that suddenly seems to be a 2025, Q4 question around the place is, well, what is AI? Is Workday now because it's got, because people like Kyle are coming and saying, hey, we've got AI features, we've got AI assistants coming in, 2026 is going to be this and this. Is that now one of our AI products, or is it moving in that direction? So what are you saying to people about, I'm not saying, do you consider yourselves an AI product in terms of native, but is that starting to shift, and it's going to become more and more of what you deliver to customers is AI, and it's got AI enablement?
Yeah, absolutely. AI feel like it's been a bit of a slow burn and a quiet build. And it's not new. I mean, we've been developing and building AI for over 10 years, right? I think some of our first AI capabilities, depending on your definition, right, started in about 2017 in terms of general availability. Looking at things like building a skills taxonomy and having AI automatically keep that maintained for you, remove duplicates and things like that, or surface recommendations to people. So that's been things that we've been able to do for a long time. I think what's changed is really the consumer availability of AI. With things like ChatGPT, I think in 2022, Gemini, Grok, Anthropic, all of those. That's now changing it to where it's really prevalent in everyone's day-to-day lives, even personally. And now they're expecting that same user experience in their work life. And so in terms of your question, in terms of AI and Workday, we absolutely are an AI solution, and it is native to our platform. And I think a lot of technology companies you'll see are saying the same thing, because if you're a tech business right now, you have to have that as part of your offering. Um, and yeah, I think the adoption of it is really, really important. I think it's easy for tech companies to come out and say they've got thousands of AI capabilities, but when you go under the surface and look, it's really, RPA or something like that. We're really focusing on not trying to do 1,000 things. We're trying to focus on the capabilities that are going to drive really big ROI and are easy for you to consume, turn on, and use. So that's typically what we're seeing our approach.
Yeah, interesting. Natalie, this slipperiness of what AI, we thought we knew what AI was, but it's becoming like infecting just about everything. Have you seen that in the firms you've been working with?
I have, and I think it needs simplifying for people, because let's talk about agentic AI for a second. So some of us will know what agentic AI means, and other people will not know what agentic AI means. It will become something intuitive in the future because it's just a natural language product that's going to go and tell other bits of the AI system to do things that you want it to do. You're not going to have to knit it all together, but you can just imagine that this strategy, how do we cope and bring them along the ride with us, is they need help, because when there's so many different phrases in related to AI, whether it's agentic AI or Gen AI or AI that's incorporated and it enables other systems, because sometimes AI is sitting alongside another system, helping a process be modified or automated, etc. That for people who are not leaning into technology, it can all just feel a bit much. Too much, don't really understand what that all means. It's another reason why, especially I would say in the law firms, if people don't understand it, they don't want to lean into it because they're used to being experts.
Yeah.
And they do not want to look silly when they're speaking to a client about something that a client understands if they don't understand it. So they'll stay away from it. But actually, I think to younger generations or us, you can simplify AI. It's lots of things, and it can be involved in lots of different processes, and it can be agentic, but it still sits on the know, and we can touch and feel and use it for. And I don't think we have to give it lots of different labels, but we just have to simplify the terminology for it for people.
Natalie, that was very good. I don't know about whether it's just me. We lost a bit. Yeah, I think Kyle and I. So presumably everybody lost your sound a couple of times there. So you just suddenly, you were still talking, so you didn't even know it. So I don't know if there's anything you can do, headphones or anything, but we just seem to lose your voice. But we'll bear with it. We got most of it, so
Real
it shouldn't
quick
be a big
follow-up
problem.
to that, Chris. I think
Yeah, Kyle.
I totally agree with what Natalie's saying. There's so many different definitions and capabilities, and I think part of, especially in the legal sector, there's a lot of cautious optimism and, people being hesitant, which I think is the right thing in your sector, given the sensitivity and the importance and criticality and of the work that you
Yeah.
do. And I think you really got to bring people along this journey. I mean, there could be simple things that you turn on, like helping give them like a more access, give Copilot more access to also access Workday, for example, to go log an absence and get that approved really quickly, meet them where they work, that type of capability versus something more advanced. We have like a recruiting agent that's actually helping recruiters with AI do candidate screening and give them a guided manager experience to help automate and focus on high level activities, right? Those are all capabilities we have, but not everyone's going to be ready to jump right to that advance. But there's tons of ROI to it. We have one customer that saw that they hire over 9,000 people a year, and they were able to reduce manual processes in their recruiting by like 43%. So there's a lot of impact to it, but you have to make that gradual step and bring people along that journey.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So I think we'll come back to cautious optimism at some point, and also the recruitment. That's really interesting. Those case studies around things like recruitment, which aren't necessarily getting talked about as much in the legal profession, where a lot of the focus is on, how is this working in client-facing legal work. But so we'll come back to that as well when we talk about attraction of new candidates. But we're into something here. I think both what Natalie and Carl have just been talking about get us into something we've talked about as we prepared for today. The spectrum, the fact that we're not, clearly as ever, really, lawyers and people in law firms and the legal sector are at very different points in terms of enthusiasm, adoption, knowledge, capability, competence, whatever, fear. And we talked a bit about that. Natalie, I think you've particularly kind of said, well, there's quite a spectrum of people here. And I think you started out when we were talking about it before, almost at the top end. I'll say that, the people who are embracing, and some examples from your recent experience of those early adopters, enthusiasts, the way in which they're engaging with Copilot or other things. You got some examples of that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about I've got full network coverage and my microphone's on. So any more problems, I'll try and move just in case there is some.
Yeah.
Seems to be affecting me.
It happened. It happened again.
Right, let me move. Let's go to Kyle and I'll move just in case.
I'll go to Kyle. Sorry about the gremlins. Kyle, yeah, spectrum of users and adopters, and it's a challenge for all organizations to then kind of deal with such a wide variety of people. Experiences and thoughts about how organizations go about doing that. And Kyle, you're on mute.
We're ticking all the Zoom boxes today.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was talking to the CHRO of an outsourcing customer of ours, and so I know it's a slightly different sector, but I think it's relevant here. They do a lot of high volume recruiting, and they're hiring a lot of people, doing a lot of onboarding at scale, and so they constantly have to think about how they train people, bring them up quickly, and do that effectively. And they also have a very diverse workforce. They have people across 5 generations in their workforce from all different backgrounds. And he was saying, it's really important to make sure you understand how your different users consume and learn and want to engage with technology and want to learn, which I think is very relevant in the legal sector as well, right? You're going to have very different levels of experience. You have different generations in your workforce. So you need to offer different methods for them to learn. And you need to make it very accessible and make it available in ways that they expect or when they need it. And so he just thought, that making it accessible and in a lot of different formats for the different types of ways people learn was really, really important. I thought it was a somewhat obvious, but really great insight from someone who has to do this across a very big workforce.
I think about that. You self-deprecatingly said somewhat obvious, but in some senses it is, isn't it? I think we've probably talked about learning styles and the challenge of getting skills and messages over to particularly busy people for years and years. It's not. I don't think it's something personally. I don't think it's something the legal profession does very well these days. I think people are too busy, too remote, and we haven't necessarily moved with the times in many cases. But it's obvious. But I think the point about it is you're underlining is it's so important right now. This is critical. You've got this very diverse group of people, some of whom are moving at lightning speed into this world. Know a lot more than the three of us combined, I suspect. Some of the lawyers out there, and others are petrified, and almost it's not for me, or it's not going to happen to me, or whatever. And yet we've got to take everybody. That's what's something I've been talking with firms about a lot more. Is the days when people could sit there petrified and go, I don't think this is going to matter. I'm going to skip this. So I'm going to sit this one out. My clients like the way I work. You kind of have to say to those people, it's not the world you live in anymore. You've got to engage, and we've got to help you engage. Natalie, you're back. Not that you went anywhere. So hopefully we're okay with the sound. This point about the spectrum from your point of view, and particularly, as I say, you've seen some interesting, positive behavior from people who are really trying to engage with this.
Yeah, and I think that you'll see when you start rolling out kind of Copilot licenses, I've seen the whole spectrum. So I've got some people in legal and outside of legal, when they open up their laptop at the beginning of the day, their Copilot or equivalent is the first application that they will open, because they are using it multiple times every day with nearly every single other application that they are using. So Outlook is a huge area of benefit if you use Copilot well. And in the legal sector, we are drowning sometimes in our emails. There are so many of them, including client and internal emails. You've also got people, though, who are leaning in. So, for instance, I know a partner who is already trying to develop his own agents in Copilot because he's genuinely interested. He leans into technology. He's one of the first partners you would always go to if you wanted to do a tech project and get a business perspective, because he will, out of his own time, enjoy actually working out what it can do for him. Now, he is at that very end of the spectrum where he's a very good partner, he's very good with clients, but he really enjoys it. So you're going to get more out of him. He's going to find out how to use that in a way that you wouldn't necessarily have worked out yourself, because he's absolutely leaning into it. You've then got the other spectrum where people resist using it for various different reasons, I would say. It's not one size fits all in terms of people resist it because they're just of a certain generation. I would say that people resist it. First of all, we touched upon it before. They don't really understand it. And therefore, they're a little bit worried about what it all means. One, they're a bit worried sometimes. If you're doing a specific project in a back office area, people might be worried about their own jobs. Am I leaning into a project here, and is this going to affect what my job looks like, or whether I even have a job? So you need to do the communication around that for specific projects that will obviously drive efficiencies or commercial benefits within your organization. Also, though, especially with fee earners and partners, and maybe this is certainly generational, is, do I really understand what you're asking me to use and why? I mean, it's just another piece of technology. I don't love technology anyway, but I use it because I'm forced to, because I can't do these things without it. But actually now you're asking me to do it off my own back. Am I going to do that? Because I don't really know what benefits it's going to bring to me. I don't really get it. But I would say another huge resistor that people forget about, people always think that it's a conscious decision for people, whether or not they decide to use this type of technology or not. Sometimes people are just too busy. They're so busy, they're working innumerate chargeable hours, plus doing client events, everything else that they do in the non-chargeable time. And then you're asking them to get to grips with a new system in their mind. So they consciously will buy into the benefits and say, oh yeah, I get it. I like ChatGPT, so they know bits of it, but they don't have the time to invest fully to drive out the benefits, because it will just naturally get subconsciously deprioritized because client work will come first. So I think you have to be able to help. This is the biggest nut to crack, I would say, is the busy people, because it's not that they are consciously resisting the change. And there's a huge cohort of those people that are running around trying to fit everything into their day.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. I think it is the biggest nut to crack, or certainly one of the biggest nuts to crack. and really, really challenging to get at it. It's that classic, you hear it everywhere. It's become a cliche, hasn't it? You know, I'm too busy to work out how to do this, which will save me time. You know,
Yeah. And I would
but
say that I'm a convert because that was me. I was too
yeah,
busy to adopt this. And we'll talk about later in terms of the ways that you can get people to adopt. It was hearing experiences of people I respected and I saw as my peers talk to me about how they had used AI and it had benefited them, and talked me through a quick real life experience, that the light bulb really came on for me. It was then meaningful and I actively wanted to go and make time for it, not an email giving me some hints and tips on how to use AI.
I think
I think that's great. Yeah.
I agree with that. You know, learning from other people is also very useful and really helpful. And I had one law firm customer in the US talk about a mentorship program they put in, and we all do, like, you know, mentorship is really, really common, but they made sure to emphasize the bi-directional relationship of this mentorship program, where the more experienced people obviously bring those soft skills or relationships, litigation strategies, and ethical considerations, those types of things. But the early in career people bring working with tech, using AI. So they really want that to be bi-directional, so that we're making sure we're fostering that culture of learning and development across all levels. And I just thought it was a great example of how a law firm is thinking about this.
Yeah, that's a really good example as well. And I've seen firms flip what has often been the classic kind of rollout approach, which is, oh, we need to go for the partners first, and we need to put these tools in their hands and get them to kind of be role models and sell it into the firm, and it trickles down. And there's a lot of truth in that. You know, people copy what they see in senior people, but it feels like it isn't really working for some of this change. And if you can get it in the hands of natural enthusiasts who might be, not all, but might be more junior, and who have maybe a little bit more time to use it, but then support those people at the lower levels. You know, explain that to the partners they are going to be using it. You need to kind of watch what they do and do a bit of that bi-directional mentoring. I think that helps. But I think naturally, your point about getting the people who are doing something, you know, got use cases, got success stories, and getting them to share those with others across the firm is incredibly powerful. And it's a bit of a deal, isn't it, with the people who get the tools and use them a lot. Well, we're giving you the tools, we're giving you the support maybe, but there's something we want back, which is we'd like you to share this and explain it and be champions or pioneers or super users, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I mean, my light bulb moment with AI. So I was fortunate that I was given an AI license to just go away and play with. And I'll be really honest, you know, this was a while back. I didn't get very far with it because I was too busy to work it out for myself. And I knew it was important. I kept saying, oh, I've got to get around to it. And it was actually a conversation with a friend of mine who worked in digital marketing, who basically said, oh my God, I can't now imagine work life without AI. And I was like, tell me more. Tell me more about why you can't imagine it. And she was saying, oh my God, it has just helped me so much with so many different things I do. And once I kind of said to her, well, just explain to me the top 5 things that it does for you. Because I was thinking, I really want to know this, because I'd not heard real life examples from someone that I respected in the workplace who was also very senior and very, very busy. Someone who was very, very busy. And I felt I'm also very busy. You know, and it was interesting because she was saying she needed to put somebody on a PIP. And obviously nobody in their right mind enjoys the PIP process, whether you're having to administer it or you're having to be a participant of it. And she got AI to write the whole PIP process, look through our whole email inbox of look at the process, get everything checked off with HR in terms of this is how I'm going to run it, prompt her every week, work out how often the meetings would need to be, etc. And it was a huge light bulb moment for me. And I was like, we have got to start using this more effectively because it is no bounds in terms of what it can help you with.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And you said that point about don't just say, here's your license, it's AI, it's Copilot, it's Harvey, it's Legura, whatever. Go and use it, play around with it. That isn't good enough. And I think I've seen that firms have learned by and large. Occasionally it works with a few people. That just doesn't work. People are too busy. They need the support. They need to understand the tools better. They need those kind of light bulb moments of, you could use that. You could do it for this. Other lawyers, have done this. And I think we're coming out of an era which was very focused on, we're going to get some licenses and throw them at people and, see what happens. And it produces some interesting stuff, but it isn't a way of getting the whole organization moving. Kyle, what about that from you've got a lot of experience within Workday of organizations implementing your software and then implementing the AI tools you've got. What do you think you've learned about good ways to do that, good ways to get adoption?
I think Natalie's hit on a couple of them, and I was just like vehemently nodding my head because I was like, yes, she's totally right. To me, I kind of look at change management, right? So any technology change, whether it's AI or deploying a new ERP or HR product, change management is so important. And one aspect that I see being critical is a lot of people are investing in a phase zero type process. It's kind of like a preparedness phase. All right, what are we trying to achieve? What's the objective? Do we have the right upstream processes or data foundation, that kind of thing? How are we going to handle our change management, our data strategy? Just makes you really prepared to then start going and executing on that change, whatever it is, right? That transformation project or that new AI feature. Then as you're doing it, it's really key to keep iterating from the top, from senior leadership, why we're doing this, why it's important to the firm, how it's going to help you as an individual be more productive, more efficient, add more value. That communication is so important. And we had one firm, as they're actually getting close to rolling out Workday, they're a smaller accountancy firm in Western UK. And their managing partner, their COO and partner, and a junior basically got in a car, drove to all 9 offices, and did an event. Like, this is the new experience. They had the junior demo. This is going to be my life on Workday. And it was just, again, they had senior leadership communicating it. They had a junior talking about how this is going to help them in their day to day. And they've just been a great, fantastic customer. And I think it just starts from that, like Natalie said, communicating why this is important for the firm and how it's going to help you add value to the firm.
Some great tips and tools there, and that point about your accounting firm. We might come back to that in towards the end, because I've got a question from somebody which kind of, when you said about that assistant talking, it sort of reminds me, somebody's asked, how can we make our people AI proof? I don't suppose the person who phrased the question expects us to have an entirely positive answer, but we might come back to that assistant who goes, hey, this is how my life's going to change. A couple of quick questions actually that have come up. Somebody asked, just define or tell us what RPA means, which robotic process automation. But Kyle, that's a previous generation, still being used, but a previous generation of kind of automation technology.
It's a tool, it's a tool to automate manual processes. A lot of time often used for data entry, just automating data entry is a common use case. I think RPA is probably a skill that like an agentic AI could use, right? Like there's agentic AI really is the layer that people interact with, and then it's going to have skills and capabilities and go interact with other agents that then have the ability to go do functions or do tasks. And RPA is certainly a kind of a predecessor that has led to that. Hopefully that helps.
Brilliant. And Natalie, some people use it, some people don't. PIP, performance improvement plan, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Performance improvement plan.
Right, I'm moving on a bit. So one of the things that came up earlier on, and Natalie, you talked about your passionate belief that AI is actually going to fundamentally move the dial. And then you said something which I really liked, and we talked a bit about on our prep call, which is it's going to be a huge business advantage for some, which is a really interesting question. So this whole thing about which is a very people question. It's not a finance question. law firm business model, and more broadly, Kyle, I guess the professional services business model. And I don't mean, is it a partnership? Is it a company? There's an element of that, but just, how we work, often a pyramid, juniors doing plenty of work we make quite a lot of money out of, smaller partnership leverage, recording every minute. It's very much based around, if we've done the time, we can charge it, we can add a bit of a margin on top. The sense that is shifting at an accelerating pace is something we've talked about, and that does create huge disruption for people, whether that's leaders, partners, people who've been doing this 30 years, people who've just joined, support staff, and sort of business services people, lawyers. So we do think there's a big change going on here, and it is difficult for people. What are you seeing, Natalie, starting with you? And I think it's interesting, the background you've got in the insurance law sector, where some of this change in business model may have been seen a little bit earlier before we came to Gen AI. But what are you thinking is really moving now, and what are the things people need to be tackling and dealing with?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think about the last 15 years, all of the webinars or conferences I've been to, and there've been talk, and I'm sure you would recognize this, Chris, for a long time about the consolidation is going to come in the legal market, and we've thought at various different points that something was going to trigger it. I do think that consolidation is going to be triggered by technology within the legal market, and I think the firms who it's going to benefit the most, the ones who are going to be at the sharp end of thinking that through, I would say, and not naively hoping that it's going to be another kind of false start in terms of how the legal market will consolidate. But I think that in terms of AI, you're going to be driven in terms of your business models by two different elements. So insurance is quite interesting in terms of, I've been in insurance all the way from volume insurance, kind of the personal injury market, where lawyers are working on more than 100 cases a day. They're flipping between a caseload of 100 to 150 cases, all the way to where you have more of a normal traditional law firm model, where you're working with a client on so many pieces of litigation or contract law or whatever, with a more understandably smaller pyramid structure. But in the insurance market, and I would say this applies to any of the sectors that your clients are in, because AI isn't just something that's going to affect the legal sector, it is of course going to be affecting the whole industry out there, and all your clients will sit in the whole industry out there. So clients themselves are grappling with all the same questions we are on this call. How do they retain their people? How do they get talent in? How are they going to use AI? How are they going to stay competitive? And they are going to be expecting their supply chain, which, let's face it, that's what we are. We have strategic relationships with clients, but we are part of their supply chain, and we are expensive. How are we going to be using all of the same techniques that they are to use AI to our full advantage and pass those benefits on to our clients? Now, we are already in the insurance market seeing those questions in tenders, specific questions around AI. How are you using AI? What products? How are you using it within your firm? How's it making you more efficient? And what's the commercial benefit to us? How are you passing those savings on to us as a client? So that is naturally driving a different business model of how you are going to incorporate and try and incorporate AI that drives a return on investment. I mean, in the insurance market, even before AI, we now have to, for some insurers, pass invoicing on to third parties. They will go through and check all of your narratives. And if your narratives do not fit the contract, you're not getting paid that chargeable time for that element of work that you have done for them. It can be quite ruthless. And, AI is going to be another advent of that in terms of expected efficiencies. So not only, I think, will law firms have the pressure of their clients in certain sectors of what they expect you to be able to achieve with AI, they'll also have the people element of those people who will want to have the skill sets of being able to use AI, want to work at a law firm where they understand a progressive strategy on AI and how that's going to make the law firm they work at competitive in the marketplace. And therefore, law firm strategy will be pincered, I think, by both of those elements in terms of making sure that you're at the front of the pack and you're not constantly catching up, or even worse, struggling to really get into the race on this.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Out of Pinsard, I'm sure some people will be taking that one away and sharing that with their colleagues and their boards and their partnership groups tomorrow. So well done for that. It's yeah. There's so many different factors all coming together here. We talked on our prep call, and I'll ask Kyle to sort of maybe think about how this looks in other sectors as well and other industries. But we talked about whether this is moving so fast. We're just entering a phase, and I certainly a different phase where we've got leadership teams in law firms, and they might be groups of partners. It might be a very small kind of inner cabal. It might be private equity owned firms, limited companies, whatever, who are now looking at this and going, we don't necessarily wish this is going to happen, but we are starting to think about a dramatically different structure with tens, hundreds, maybe thousands, if you're a global firm, less people in it. And that's what we're starting to see in other organizations and industries, it seems to me. Kyle, the accounting market, which you do a lot of work in, we've seen a lot of announcements from big accounting firms recently about, and consulting firms, we're going to have this many less jobs. Are you seeing this in a lot of other organizations you deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. I look across consulting, accounting, legal, staffing, outsourcing, and others. And we actually had what we call an advisory council. We brought customers across the PBS sector together and was hearing a very similar theme across all of them this summer about how revenue growth is slowing down in general in professional services. And they're also seeing some of those factors Natalie was talking about, client pressure on costs and pricing. There's also still, a need for top talent. So wages are still going up. So their bottom line's going up as well. So it's really causing pressure on their margin. And the two main outputs of that are focusing on scalable, profitable growth. So the growth we do get, we need to make sure it's scalable, profitable growth. The second factor is just increasing the productivity of our people. And AI certainly is being seen as an enabler to help you achieve those two things. And then in terms of like the market and the consolidation, there was a study by KPMG last year that showed that 43% of the PE transactions in the UKI last year were in the professional business services sector. So this is a place that's getting increased focus and increased capital coming in. And that capital is going to drive, in my experience, it's driving two main things. It's gobbling up that consolidation, going and finding, helping you grow into new markets or new areas or get those smaller firms and consolidating yours. Also, investment in technology. They're seeing the professional services sector as a place where technology investments, particularly AI, is going to help them competitively differentiate. So I think that's just going to increase the acceleration of things Natalie was talking about, those firms that are able to use this to a competitive advantage. So yeah, absolutely seeing that across all of professional services and legal is no different.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then we've had a few questions through which have a bit of that flavor to them. And actually one of them, which is really interesting, it's quite a long and very interesting question, which basically talks about that we've got an explosion of AI solutions. We can see them all over the place, and there's a lot to be consumed and validated and so on. And are we, is all of this actually going to make us more productive? Or are we just going to be, learning a load more new systems and doing things in a different way? Now, you did just say AI and other, advanced technology is making industries more productive and will do. And I think that's probably the general view out in the economy. But that's you think we can point now to ways in which AI
I think we're definitely going to start to
do that.
see. I think we'll start to see a lot more use cases of actual quantifiable impact. I don't think we've seen it that much yet, to be honest. I was just at an event a couple months ago, again for the accounting sector, and I was in a room with a bunch of CIOs, and I just asked the question, how many of you invested in AI over the last year? Every hand goes up. How many of you seen ROI on an investment? Almost every hand goes down. I think some of this goes back to some of the things we've already talked about. This is just some of the things like Copilot and just being more productive in your everyday, summarizing meetings and helping you automate some of those mundane tasks.
Yeah.
that's just going to be the expectation of the future workforce. So like there's just some investment you have to make because this is just the future of work and it's going to help you. You compete with your clients in your competitors in two markets, for clients and for people. And one of the best ways you can compete for people is that employee experience, giving them the tools to have a better work life. So Copilot, how are you going to measure if you've saved somebody 1 minute or 2 hours in a day? It's really tough to measure that. Even if you could, how do you measure that they put that into client-facing, revenue-generating work or learning or just went and walked the dog? So some of this you just have to know it is increasing productivity. That being said, there's plenty of AI use cases where you can see measurable, tangible, quantifiable impact, and we have a lot of use cases around that. And some of the technology we're helping our customers adopt and use, particularly around back office. Where you can see the scalable back office, where you grow your revenue at, let's say 20%, but you're not having to grow that back office function at the same rate. That leads to that scalability that we were talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just before we move on to our final section, Natalie, just on that point, we're not seeing these. Maybe it's not absolutely clear. We can't measure all of the productivity, but it's there and it's coming through. Is that how you're feeling about what you've seen?
Yeah, and you've got a whole generation of people who, are using some form of AI, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever, just in their normal personal life. Forget about professional life. Everybody is now starting to use that instead of a Google search engine. They're going into Copilot, or ChatGPT or whatever they're doing. They will not accept not having that capability within work. Absolutely not. It's like the new internet. Like, how did I ever search for holiday before? I can't believe before. All of these big transitions that we've had in technology that affect us personally in our personal life, how we use our phones, how we use all systems. We can never quite quickly remember what life was like before then, but we wouldn't want to go back in terms of how they've helped us, in terms of how we do things. Well, that is my view in terms of Copilot of the future. There's absolutely no getting away from it, that people are going to just expect it as part of their work package to be able to access it. And I think that within some industries, it's not so problematic if people go and use ChatGPT instead of something that they might have within their industry. Legal sector, it's an imperative. You do not want people putting in anything around the data within your law firm into the big wide world through ChatGPT, and you don't want them taking any hallucinations out of that into their own work life. So you are going to have to invest in to make sure that you've got a closed AI system, because it's going to be just, honestly, I think from my perspective, it's going to be absolutely just expected as a norm. And to the point where the younger generations would not want to work for you if they would not have a Copilot type style tool to help them in their everyday life. It will be something that, like we say to our kids now, we didn't have a mobile phone. They can't even imagine it. It's going to be like that.
Exactly.
They couldn't even imagine not using ChatGPT or Copilot in work.
And very quickly. I think that's the other thing. That there's the theme to what we're talking about. I loved it when Kyle said something earlier on about, we have this advisory panel who talked to us, and this is what they said this summer. And it was almost like, now you have to say this summer thing. You have to say that was this summer. So, I know it'll be out of date in 3 months' time, and we'll do it again. And 20 years ago in the legal industry, it didn't matter whether it was this summer or last summer or the summer before that. It would have been broadly similar. Somebody's put a great point, which I think we all agree with, despite our kind of generally optimistic view of productivity, which is, you can put computers in and you can put systems in, but productivity only comes with transforming commercial and operating models together. And I certainly believe that. I'm sick of saying now to people who are saying, which system should I buy? And we've got this system and it's not really delivered anything. And what's the ROI about changing from this ERP to this ERP? It isn't what you buy, it's what you do with it. It really is. You've got to rethink your business and your business model, and be challenging and be agile. And if you're just going to do the same old thing, you're going to get the same old results just with a large tech bill. So we're just going to move on. And the final section, we enjoyed talking about this on the prep. So the bringing it all back together to people, and particularly, how you keep your people and how you attract new people. So we talked a bit about attrition and retention, and I think Natalie, you had a kind of bit of a 3-point model of this is why people leave firms, leave organizations. And we started to think about how the world of AI and being in this era affects those 3 things. But why don't you just lay your 3 things out, and perhaps we'll just talk about those.
Yeah, so I like to think about things in simplistic terms as possible. So if I think about it, it's how do you attract people? How do you keep people? And how do you stop people, the attrition question. So I think from a human perspective, people need 3 things if they think about their work life and their career. Am I being treated fairly? Number 1, absolute basic needed principle for everybody. Am I being paid fairly? Do the benefits feel fair? Have I got a good work-life balance? All of those types of things. They'll look against their peers if they can find that information out. Does it feel fair? And they'll look as well outside of their own business in the wider competitive arena. Who do I think my direct competitors are, and am I being treated fairly versus people within those firms? So that's one that we fundamentally have to get right and very important to people. Next one is, do I feel I belong? Do I like the culture here? Do I like to kind of lean into the values? Do they resonate with me? Does the firm live its values? Do I get on with my team? Have I got good line management? Do I fit in? Do I feel like I belong? Do I like working here? And then the last one, I think, which is really important in terms of the future of AI, can I see my future here? Because that's all around, particularly about, let's talk about your top talent. So your top talent are usually the people who are very hardworking, but usually also ambitious to a point. They might not all want to be big partners of the future, but they're ambitious and they're great people within your organization. And those people usually want to continually learn, continually develop, continually feel like they're adding value and they're moving forwards. So they need things like transparent and clear career paths. They need to feel as if they're getting the skills they need to equip them in the market moving forwards. And they are going to want to be upskilled in the world of AI. They're going to want to know that they're at a firm, if they're going to stay here into the future, has an AI strategy that resonates with them, that they feel is competitive and they feel it is going to be effective for that business moving forwards. And they're going to think, what does it mean for me? What's my upskilling? What's my training? Because let's be really honest here, regardless of whether they stay with that firm or not, if they go out into the marketplace, they're going to want to have the skill sets to be competitive to get the jobs they want to get. And we know that so much kind of being written in the press at the moment, not just in the legal sector, but in general, about what skills are going to be most in demand in the future with AI doing a lot more of the other tasks. People are going to want to make sure that they're being supported to develop those skills so that they can feel as if no matter what happens in the future, I am going to be marketable. I am going to be somebody who can be competitive, whether I work here or whether I work somewhere else. So I think that you need to make sure that, especially if you're recruiting or you're wanting to retain people, that they do understand the strategy of the firm, they do buy into the vision of the firm, and they understand personally how they are going to be supported, and whether that's trained, mentored, etc. Access to these tools that we were talking about before. They're going to expect co-pilot licenses, etc., and to use them to their full advantage. That is going to be a fundamental part. And I think if you've not got it ready in your recruitment process at the moment to talk to people about, be ready, because people are going to start asking you.
Yeah, and people in the firm as well, as you said, people who are coming through, looking at their career, looking to be promoted up. So I think, yeah, we kind of have some concerns, don't we? That how many firms, and I think everybody who's on the call can think, have we got that? Are we delivering those skills? Have we worked out what it is that everybody, including your senior partners, will need in 3 or 4 years' time to do well? And are we delivering and supporting and investing in that? And then I think the equality thing is really interesting, which comes back a little bit to the phase we're moving into, where we might be looking at some quite tough decisions. Do you take people through that transparently and as much as you can, and try and help them and reallocate their skills and so on? Kyle, what are you seeing around this? And then I'm going to get Kyle's view on this, and then I'm going to take a couple of the questions really quickly.
No, I don't think I have much to add on top of what Natalie, I totally agree with what she said. People, it's culture, it's leadership, it's overall, are they getting paid fairly? And then just employee experience, quality of life, I think are the big factors. And we obviously technology is just one aspect that can help with some of those things, but it's not the end all be all, right? And we definitely have a lot of tools that help with those things. Like, we have a career hub, which is like an AI assistant career coach, gives you recommended learning and shows you different career paths you could look into that other people have made and recommended mentorships, that type of thing. We also have great for the candidate experience and helping you just get the people in. But again, that technology is just a small piece of improving that employee experience. There's a lot of other factors that help with retention. I think another thing that we talked about as well is just the importance of training, particularly in this sector, and people seeing that they have the ability to grow within the firm is really, really important, especially with the newer workforce. I think the way that they consume and learn and want to grow is going to be very different. There's a study in 2023, and it found that it was looking at Gen Z in particular, and 92% of them are using YouTube, 85% are using Instagram, 78% are using TikTok for learning in their personal lives, right? So this short form, small video content, very different than our traditional approach of training where it's like shove them in a room for a day and just talk about the same thing, or give them this online course that's like a 90-minute video and walls of text. Like that's not going to work for this generation, right? We just acquired a company called Sana, which we're really excited about. It's an AI native learning platform that gives people, it's learning management, gives them analytics. It helps you curate and generate content with generative AI. It also has like AI personalized tutoring to help people answer those questions point in time. So again, that's just a tool. You also need those key things that Natalie talked about, the leadership, um, the culture, and all those things as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Right, we've got some questions, and we're going to try and see if we can answer a few of these really quickly. So if you can't think of anything to answer, just pass on it. That's absolutely fine. Somebody's asked, apart from Copilot, putting it to one side, and I guess apart from Workday, what's the biggest or one of the biggest quick wins that law firms could do in terms of adopting AI? Any thoughts on that, Natalie?
Oh, in terms of of adopting AI, what will you mean? I suppose the question though is if we're putting Copilot to one side, are we talking about AI to automate?
I don't know. Could be, I suppose it could be an application. It could be something that you can do.
I would say if you're still starting out on this journey and aren't seeing the return on investment, my biggest piece of advice is to really think about your commercial business case. It's boring writing a business case, I get it. And everybody kind of sighs when they've got to write a big business case. It doesn't have to be a big one, but if you're going to invest in it, this stuff is expensive and it takes up time. And if you don't get it right, it puts people off doing the next project because they'll see that it didn't work here. So why is it going to work again? You lose momentum on it. I would go for something that is relatively small in terms of how they can get the quick wins on it in terms of the automation. But it's genuinely got something you can measure off the back of it. It's so much nicer having something you can measure to then be able to go to the rest of the law firm and say, we've saved X or we've delivered this efficiency. It's something that you can be able to gain some momentum with a couple of people who are able to say, and it's made my experience better, or I can see that happening, rather than it just being left on IT's shoulders to prove to everybody that we've saved something or done something. So I would say start small with genuine returns that you know that you're going to be able to get back from, and with other people outside of IT who can extol those benefits, because then you'll get momentum for the next project that you're able to work on. You'll also learn from your mistakes quite quickly because you'll have a few.
Okay. Kyle, anything?
Agree with Natalie. Starting with those small use cases that will deliver the impact. I think nothing is going to kill it more than how many times you use ChatGPT for something, it gives you a bad result, and you're like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to go use my historical way of doing it and Google something, right? So make sure you do something that's going to have an impact and drive that ROI. I think as much as there's you wanting to do that quick win, I really do think people need to take a step back and look at long-term strategy. AI requires a high volume of data and a high quality of data to be effective. So make sure you're working with vendors and partners that have that reputation, have that quality and that quantity, that can do it in a very compliant and help you mitigate the risk that's also implied here. So I know that's not a quick win, but I still see so many law firms using legacy disparate architecture with data sprawled all over. And if you're in that kind of landscape, you're far away from a really coherent, comprehensive AI strategy.
That's a good point. Yeah. It's a bit of your phase zero stuff there. For me, again, there's so many different answers to this, but one thing that I touched on earlier on when Carl was talking about Workday is you're finding now a lot of AI functionality and modules being built into existing software you've already got. I think it's not, they're not all right, and they're not all doing that much, if we're honest, but take a look at that. If you can look at your firm, you haven't really invested in any AI native application, you'll find that there's quite a lot of AI capability built into things. Copilot's a good example on Microsoft, but all your other applications are starting to have AI modules as well. So take a look at those and see what they can do for you and your knowledge management providers, etc. Final question. I'm cheating a bit. I think we're slightly on time, but I like the question. We might not have any answers. Is there anybody in the industry? I guess they don't have to be in the legal industry, on LinkedIn, or who's a commentator, observer that you suggest people would follow, who's really good on this stuff? Any thoughts, Kyle?
I actually went to the London Law Expo, was that last month? And the COO at Brown Jacobson, I believe, gave an amazing presentation. I thought she was fantastic. Definitely someone I'd recommend.
Abby Ewing, is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So follow great. Abby. Brilliant. Natalie, anybody from you?
Not off the top of my head. The people who I think get into a decent relationship with is you should have some decent strategic partners. For instance, we had them at Microsoft, people on your team that you can actually tap into, who I think people forget it's free to be able to utilize them, to be able to get your hints and tips from. You think they're just there to have formal meetings with or to talk to you about your contract. They're not. You can actually have, I think, a more encompassed relationship with them. I'm sure Cal would agree with this in terms of some of the suppliers that are either using AI that you're embedding into your own systems, or actually that you're buying Copilot. You've got to get to know your team on Copilot. I've been to some really great presentations with Microsoft where they focus on the legal sector. You need to go along and meet people at the presentations and speak to the guys from Microsoft who are running them. It's at your fingertips, and you've already got that relationship. So please tap into it. And
you've got to be willing to sift some of the sales talk. But I think you're right.
You'll find your people, because you're probably
good stuff in there.
We had 3 or 4 people, and you've got to find your person within that.
I'm sorry, I know we're over, but totally agree, Natalie. I mean, we just had an event a couple months ago specifically on how to get AI in law firms. We had a bunch of our law firm customers in our office with some external speakers, and it's just building that community, learning, and even look at your existing partners that you have and just see, are you getting the most out of the current investments you have? Definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot to mine there. I like a lot of the stuff. There's a guy in the States called Josh Kubicki who's well worth following, and has been for a long time. It's not an AI thing. And then I think there's loads of people in the UK I could say, but Kerry Westland at Adelshaw Goddard, I love her post. Jennifer Swallow, who's the head LegalTech UK. So they're all worth following. We do have to stop. Huge thanks, Kyle, Natalie, for doing this session.
Thank you.
I think we got through most of the things we wanted to talk about. Thanks to Net Law Media. Thanks everybody for joining. Am I allowed to say this? Have a great Christmas and New Year. And Net Law Media will see you in the new year.